Alright boys, welcome back to a new episode of How Do I Beat This? Episode number 2. After yesterday's, last week, massive success, I decided we continue this series. We got a replay from Lone Wanderer, who actually sent me an email. I should probably read it as well. What did you send, my friend? Here I got wrecked by drops of roaches combined with double nidus. It seems so difficult to defend all your bases from this. If any one nidus gets up, roaches flood everything and kill me. If I get stalkers to the nidus drops, they're a waste of money, as they're useless versus the mass roaches. Archons being too fat to move between bases also doesn't help. Archons are extremely fat and they really can't move between bases, so that doesn't help. But let's just go over the replay from start to finish. I was thinking perhaps I'll just do the point where people struggle in, but as we saw last week, I think the majority of the time when people don't actually understand why they lose. Like they'll think it's because of a drop or a nidus, but they already were down 95 supply because their early game was so bad. Stuff like this is very frequent in my coaching sessions, in some of the replays I watched so far. So let's just go from the start, see if his initial build order is correct. Now, he's playing against Spanishiwa, who's a very good American player. It's around 5k, so I'm not sure what league this is, but for this guy itself was 4k. 4.4, 4.5, and Spanishiwa 5k, so to give some context there. So we have an opening with Adept Stalker into Twilight. That should be followed up by a Robo as soon as you have the money. I'm not quite sure where all of the money is going, honestly. Okay, he has one probe too many, that's okay. So Robo does go down, and then most likely, because it's DT drop, you get a gateway, another gateway, and another gateway after you build the Dark Shrine. At the same time, you try to get some scouting information with this Adept. Like you check the worker count, maybe you check if a layer starts or something like that. Like, not that big of a deal. Okay, this is the first mistake here that we see. Well, there's a couple of mistakes happening here. So, Pylon and Assimilator before the next 3 gateways is a massive mistake. Dark Shrine hasn't started yet, and none of the gates have started. So, like I said, first you add the 3 extra gates. First you add the Dark Shrine, then the 3 extra gates, then you add a gas, a pylon, and another gas. I made a guide about this build, which I will put up here somewhere, and then you can, if you have trouble with it, you can find the opener in there. So let's continue this. Now, on top of that, he also lost his first Adept, which you never should do. If you're building 2 gateway units, make sure that you always are home in time with your Adept. So just try to be home around, or try to go home at around 3:20ish, like that. Just shade your Adept back home, otherwise something like this happens, and you can't really afford to be re-walling because you want to be getting a prism right now. So the early game is already extremely bad. Spanishiwa is gonna get, what, well, 2 units, a bunch of probes. In my eyes, this game is basically over already. Like, obviously there's still ways to come back, and I know this is the highest level, but this is an extremely bad start, and I can't stress enough how important the early game is to get into a good position in the mid game against Zerg, because sometimes it feels like you can't do anything in PvZ, and most of the time it's because you had a crappy early game. So next is going down, DTs being warped on the other side of the map, 4 DTs, all of that is good. I like this pylon. Please, if you're not sure why you do this, it's because you can put units next to the nexus, so this is 1 block away, and only very little links can attack this. If you have a sentry there, 1 force field, means that links can only attack from one side. So that's a cute little move that can help. You can also build 2 pylons next to each other with 1 spot in between. Then there's always just 1 location to attack from, which is cool. He morphs them straight in, the DT straight into an Archon, and then starts harassing. This is kind of a difficult map to harass, because there's really only 1 base. You can fly here into the main, but that's a little bit risky. Now Spanishiwa only has 3 queens, which is a mistake. And if you see almost no queens here, what I would do is I would pick up and go into the main base if he moves away from here. Like, there's no need to stay here if you can't do any damage. So that's exactly what it does as well, which is fantastic. Now the follow-up is continuous Immortal production. You're supposed to get another Forge as well, and then start adding some gateways. Continuous Pro production. So even though the first part of the early game was really bad, right now is actually in a fantastic spot. Like, he's killing a lot of workers, our lone wanderer. He's keeping up with the macro reasonably well. The only bit of criticism that I have is that he isn't really getting a forge. But the constant immortal production is really important. The constant pro production is important. Perhaps transferring these workers would be important as well. So the early game is actually, we can say this was successful. Like this was a successful early game, unless he loses this prism. Like usually if the prism gets this low and you can't escape, just recall. Like flying out like this can be kind of risky if there's queens in the middle. So try to avoid that. You know, you don't want to make that a habit. So a very late worker transfer, which actually is really bad. Some big supply blocks. Double forge is not good either. Just play single forge and get it a bit faster. Armor upgrades almost do nothing against majority of the Zerg compositions because they're going to be extremely high damage output most of the time, whether it's Lurker or Banelings. Like armor upgrades don't help that much. Also don't forget armor upgrades only do half for Protoss, as we have both shield and armor and you need to get upgrades for both. Now another thing that our player over here is lacking is that we don't really have any good map vision and we don't really have good vision on the gases. So right now Spanishiwa is completely all in. Now how could we figure that out? Being a Protoss player, well, we could use hallucination, we could use observer if we had one, but hallucination is a good tool. And we see that there's only 5 gases for the Zerg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If there's not enough gas at the base, it means that the Zerg can't really do anything other than roachling or maybe a couple of Ravagers in there. It's very difficult to get to the heavier Hydra counts, the bigger Lurker count. Banelings is practically impossible as well, or at least stacking away from Banelings will be very difficult as you just don't have the gas for it. On top of that, there's a fort base that has no drones on it, and the total worker count is 58. So taking a fort base at this point isn't really necessary. What is necessary is to get cannons in position, to perhaps get storm, just basically get anything that helps you survive. Like you don't want to be expanding and increasing your eco. He's already up very far in worker count. So ideally we get some map vision, we start storm. Our +1 should be done at this point already, but hasn't even started. There's a very big roach count. Now, look at the way our Protoss player engages here. He has a battery here, he has a natural choke in this area, but instead decides to move away from all of these advantages that he has and moves through a choke himself to try and chase some roaches, which he's being all-in with. So that's not very useful at all. Now, he does see a drop starting to happen, and this is obviously a prime opportunity for these 2 Archons in the Prism to be used. Now, don't forget that our Protoss asked, like, hey, how do I deal with drops? Now, a good way to deal with it is Archons in a Prism. DTs would be smart as well, as there's no detection with this whatsoever. You can recall as well. Look at this. Recall is available in the main, so perhaps recall a couple of units here. Leave some units in this area as well, as you don't want to be tricked back and forth. And this looks very annoying, but the key in stopping drops is being there before they unload. So really what you want to do is the moment you see this drop is you respond basically now. You see, oh, he's gonna drop. Well, there's 2 areas he's gonna drop. There's gonna be this area. This army can take care of that. And there's this area. What do I have there that can take care of it? How many warpins do I have available? Well, he only has 6 gates, which is too little as well, by the way. Should definitely be at 8 gates or 10 gates at this point. Well, I don't have any warpins available. I do have a prism with 2 Archons, so you send that to the edge. And then I guess you just recall maybe 2 Immortals immediately, and you also send them to the edge. And then the moment the warpin becomes available, you warp in perhaps 3 Stalkers and 1 DT. Put them all at the edge, so the moment units start dropping, you're there to receive them with... open arms. That's kind of your goal. Right now, I mean, chasing air units is completely useless. This area would have been defended with 8 Zealots and a single Immortal most likely as well. And once these roaches are in the main, like now he's reacting rather than anticipating. And reacting to drops when they're already in your main becomes extremely difficult. It's still doable, especially with Dark Templar, he can do some stuff, but he just recalled to the main, and you know, units are blocking his way to the third. Like, it's gonna be a lot harder. He did kill the threat in the main base now, but because half of his army got stuck behind the Stalker, it always becomes very difficult to deal with this. So this really is just a question of, like, am I in position and what are the areas that he can hit. Now, the DTs are nice, but at this point there's already Overseers. Do note that when he moved back down, he probably should have left 4 or 5 Stalkers here. Then he would have been in a way better position. But even now, he's still in a... Our Protoss is still in an okay position. I mean, he's up in workers still. If these 3 roaches don't kill every single worker in the main, he's gonna be in a pretty okay position. He's up in money, he's up in everything. All he really needs to do is kill this one Overlord and he's gonna be completely fine. Some harass being done as well, so yeah, this actually looks really good for the Protoss player. Just start your storm, up in supply, up in everything, and prepare for the next round most likely, right? So get vision in the edges, get some vision here, get some vision in the middle, get some vision at the top. And then from there on out, you shouldn't really be able to take too much damage. Hell, I would add a cannon in every single base as well. Like, if you, and you another thing you actually have to do is to check what your opponent is doing. Like, does he continue with his all-in? Is he droning up? So a good plan would be to check the 4th base, check the gas on the 3rd base. All of these things are important, but instead, our Protoss player, believing he's very far behind, because, well, 44 of his workers got killed, it's kind of irrelevant if you're still up 6 workers. Like, your opponent was really all in, your opponent is still all in, he's on 44 roaches. Sure, he has +2, you only have 1-1, but I think Protoss is really far ahead if he wouldn't push out right now. Instead, he moves out on the map without an observer, without a prism, with about 20 supplies still at home as well. Yeah, then you're gonna lose. And you're like, well, Double Nidus Roach Drop is completely broken. Even though he didn't defend properly, he still was in a really good spot, because his early game actually was kind of good, except for the fail at the start. And now most likely he's still in a fine position. Like, as long as he just starts his next upgrades. Spanish still is on 53 workers. Like, income is basically even. I don't quite understand the need for this Protoss to attack, but he's creating such a bad army right now. Instead of adding Storm, instead of adding more Immortals and more upgrades, he keeps adding more Stalkers, which aren't really that useful. Like, you need maybe 4 or 5 Stalkers per base if you're being all-in this way, but yeah, he's getting way too many, and he's trying to attack with them. All he really needed to do was defend, because he was being all-in extremely hard. Yeah, that's basically it for this replay. Let's get into the next one. Alright, boys, here we have our man Vulcan, who was wondering why he couldn't defend his 3rd after a scrappy early game. So let's just head straight into it. It is a PvP, as we see near you is also a Protoss player. So let's start. What is this? Oh, this is for Cannon Rush, I guess. Okay, cool. Start with the early game. 2 Chrono Boost. This all looks solid. Just looking to go into most likely a standard Sentry Stalker or Stalker opener. Yeah, it's a Sentry Stalker opener. This all looks good. Scouts being had. Both players open Sentry Stalker. Never Chrono Boost this, by the way. Never Chrono Boost your Sentry when you're playing Sentry Stalker. It's completely useless. Save that Chrono Boost either for your Warp Gate. You're actually doing your opponent a favor by showing your Sentry this quickly. It's not good to do, actually. So don't do that, please. Stalker, Sentry follow-up. Yeah, this all looks insanely good, honestly. Something that you might want to do, Vulcan, is to check what first 2 units your opponent built. So your opponent now has the info that you opened with a Sentry, and he could have opened with a quicker Nexus because of that, but he didn't, so you got lucky there, my friend. And both players opening up exactly the same, going into a Robo here. He will also go into a Robo, so a complete mirror. Violence on opposite ends, most likely for a depth warp in, so it's looking like a pretty decent game. Bumpy dumpy dum. As we move forward. Forge being built, so both players going for a macro game actually. Now, this all was absolutely fine. I mean, nothing weird is going on here. So you have, in PvP at high level, what you do is you have a probe always at the ramp. I like to patrol it. You can also just leave it there. And then another thing you do most of the time is you scout with the hallucination to make sure he's not moving out. And if he is moving out, then you have a battery, extra units, and you can start an immortal if you want to. Usually I'd start my immortal before I start +1, if I know that I'm being attacked like this. So I think it's just safer. So yeah, you definitely want to scout this a little bit faster, and then if you do, just cancel your +1, go straight into immortals, and you should be fine. Like in general, I think getting fast immortals isn't that bad to begin with. Now, in this kind of fight, it's very difficult, of course, because whoa, how does he have this many stalkers? Well, because 4 of them are hallucinated. Slightly too late with this as well, and this is not a good move. I'm gonna have to tell you that. It's a bad move to move up there. You see that a lot of them are hallucinated. I think this is a good pro pool as well, but I still think you immediately should have built an immortal. Like, your immortal is way too late. You're losing a lot of mining because of it, and that's a big waste. So as a countermeasure, what I would recommend here, now that you've already lost some workers, is I try to put on some counter pressure with this pylon. Warp into a depth, see if you can get into the main base, as this is a bad early game for you. I mean, you lost 5 workers, he didn't. +1 upgrades are relatively even when it comes to the timing. First immortals out at the same time. Like, it doesn't look great for you, you're just slightly behind. A good way to get back in the game on PvP, especially in Robo versus Robo, is to get 2 immortals and put them in a prison. And usually the guy that first gets 2 immortals on the other side of the map has a good chance of winning. Now, this is really bad for you. I understand that you're doing the same thing on the other side of the map, and that is nice, but this is one of the reasons why when you have this many stalkers especially, you leave 1 stalker patrolling here. Or if you have as many as you have, leave 1 stalker patrolling here and 1 stalker patrolling here. So you have a lot of time to react to it. Right now, like, both of you are gonna lose a bunch of workers. You might kill more. He's gonna kill a bunch. It's not a pretty situation, alright? Ideally, this wouldn't happen. He actually did a very good job though. He killed, what, 11 workers with 2 adapts. That's very nice. Now, the plan when you're playing PvP and you're in this kind of scenario really is to get 2 immortals, put them in a prism, go up to 8 gates, get your +2 out, get your charge out, and get the 44 probes. Then take a 3rd base. That's really all you need to do. So, no matter what happens, that really is your entire goal in a Robo versus Robo. So you're getting extra gates, which is good. You're not getting charge yet, that isn't too hot. You're not getting a prism, which also annoys me. The prism with the 2 immortals is extremely good. You have no vision whatsoever of the map. A lot of the time, it's better to lose a probe in this area than to figure out that his army is here at the last moment, because you might not be in position, you have absolutely no clue what's happening. And also, especially if you're dropping on the other side of the map, if he's here with his army, it means there's nothing here. Or if he's here with his army, it means you might want to recall your drop with 2 immortals. So this is why I always say map vision is so important, and it's really easy to do. Like, it takes like 2 seconds, it's gonna save you so many headaches. Just moving your units slightly forward, moving them to forward position, sending 1 probe here, it's 50 minerals, like, it's not gonna kill you. What is gonna kill you if he arrives here with his entire army and you're stuck in a little corner because you actually move commanded there, then he comes in, kills both of your batteries. Not that that ever happened to me. Lamayo. Okay, that happens a lot. 2-2 versus 2-2. The way you play, you're gonna win every single game where you get ahead in the early game, and you're gonna lose every single game where you got behind in the early game. It's because you're not doing anything. You're like waiting for stuff to happen to you, basically. Like, you're just waiting to get abused, for the stronger man to knock you out of your spot, basically. You'll defend yourself a bit, but then, you know, if he doesn't attack well enough, you win, but never ever will you try to make something happen. and then nothing will happen, you know? And if you have two players like you playing against each other, not only do you create some of the most boring games, but also you don't really have a chance to get back into the game. Like, there's no action on the map. Your attacks are very one-dimensional. I mean, these two adepts, nothing else is happening. It has happened a couple of times before. He should be ready for it. Whenever you do an attack, try to make it somewhat surprising or have two things happen at the same time. I know it's not easy, but this kind of stuff, it might work a couple of times. It might win you some games, but the higher you get on the ladder, the less this kind of stuff will work. And then you just lose 200 minerals for free. In a situation where you're already behind in supply. And don't get me wrong, like, the theory behind your play is good, but a prison with two immortals, like, while the two adepts are shading into the natural, that's the kind of stuff that's actually gonna pull back a lot of games, instead of just help you win games that you already were winning. So try to incorporate that kind of stuff more. Now, I still think you're in an okay-ish position to defend, honestly. Like, I think it's completely possible for you. This is a risky move, the +3 in this case. I'm not entirely sure on that. You're going to be under attack. You're not aware if he has a third or not. You know you have a third, right? You're completely aware that you have a third. But in your head, you're up a base, and you're starting +3, while you're most likely being all in from 2 bases. I'm gonna go ahead and call that a no on that. I don't think that's a good idea. I'd recommend not to do it. I'd rather get another Archon. Another thing I'd recommend is to have a probe here and send maybe a Zealot slightly forward here, so you can see his army movement once again. So on this map, you defend this area with batteries, which is the correct call. But that means there's no batteries here. Luckily, you have a natural advantage of a ramp, which means you don't need batteries here. But you do need to know that if he is moving here, you need to position yourself here. Otherwise, there's no natural advantage, and you lose the advantage of the batteries. You're not going to win a fight in that case, because you're down 20 supply. Now, even with batteries, it's going to be pretty tight, honestly. You don't have charge either yet, which is also painful. I mean, chrono boosting +3 while the opponent is at the doorstep. I have to admit, you're an ambitious man, but I don't think ambition's gonna, do too well in this game, because what you need right now is you need like more Archons, you need more units. Here we have Mr. 4 Archon, and you're stuck on 2. So yeah, it's just gonna be a very, very rough fight. And I think you could have had at least 3, maybe 4 Archons as well. Together with batteries, you might be able to do something then. But yeah, now you just have too little stuff, basically. The stuff you have isn't good enough. Like, there are some micro mistakes. This Archon could have gone down if you targeted it. I think there was a command of your Zealots chasing him, which I wouldn't have done personally. But I mean, you were already in a pretty bad position. So really try to work on getting stuff done. Like, get a prism into the main base while 2 adepts are shading in. Once again, another thing so the way I would approach a fight like this, so if I was in your position at this point, let's see if we can do it. Yeah, it works. Yeah. So this is kind of how I would do it. All right. So you have some weird hotkeys. I would add some of these. I'd send one of these forward, and you have an observer, so you can put it here. This way, not only can you be more confident in your army positioning here, but also whenever he moves there, you can actually find him, basically. I'd also get 1 or 2 more batteries in the back. Now, I'm not saying this would have won, but I'm saying that I'm pretty sure I would have had a higher chance of winning here. As I definitely had at least 1 more Archon. My 4th Archon also is a lot faster. Should have pulled the 3 Stalkers, obviously. And then maybe if he puts his prism too far forward, you can kill him. It's still gonna be rough, you don't have charge, but perhaps it gives you a better chance. So I hope that helps, Mr. Vulcan. And actually, I think that's gonna be it for this episode of How Do I Beat This? As you notice, we spend a lot more time on the replays that we did have. So we do less games, but we do them more in depth. If you guys prefer higher speed, more replays, feel free to leave that in the comments down below, as I'm still, like I said, I can change the format whenever I want. I can do what I want. It's a new show and it's really just for you people. So please leave down below what you would like to see change. Would you like to see me take control more of replays? Maybe I should figure out how to draw on the map to make it a little easier to follow. This kind of stuff. Feel free to leave below, and don't forget to subscribe and like the videos. That directly helps me. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you boys hopefully tomorrow for a pro game analysis. Bye bye.